Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about Zimbabwe lately. I was born in Zimbabwe and I moved to the United Kingdom when I was 5 years old. And I've been thinking a lot about Zimbabwe and identity and the impact that living in between two worlds has on who you are, how you think, your perception, your mindset. And I guess this is some sort of reflections on what it means to be a Zimbabwean living in the diaspora and the impact that that's had but on me. But before we get into that, toda kukutendai hama dzekuzimbabwe, toda kuremekedza. Let's see how far we can get here. Toda kuremekedza ana mai nana baba ana sekuru nana mbuya vauya pano payoutube channel yangu kuti vaone zviri kuitwa nemwanasikana wavo. Ndine chikumbiro chishuro something ndanga ndichikumbirisisawo ana mai ana baba kuti muprese like nekukomenta pavidhiyo inoi nekuishare kune vanhu vese vemuzimbabwe pane nhau yatiri kutaura nhasi. So with that being said, let's get started. I'm so scared of chickens. I'm terrified of chickens. I'm an African, scared of chickens. So let's see what happens. Oh, Bobby. Bobby. Vra doja mãe. So yes, I came to the United Kingdom when I was 5, and I don't really remember much about Zimbabwe. I have little memories. I remember being at nursery, but what's interesting is I don't remember ever being black. I don't remember ever thinking that I was different. I kind of just always blended in, and there was a comfort and a safety around that. So when I came to England, I think the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I'm black. As a 5 year old, I remember thinking that because it was a cultural difference. I think there's something that has or plays a part in you seeing people that look like you, that have the same hair as you, that talk like you, that look like you, that speak like you. I think there's something that it does to your identity and to how you see yourself when you now become the minority as opposed to the majority. So I remember coming to the UK when I was 5 and going to school, and I remember I remember it very, very vividly, thinking how different I was. All of a sudden, my eyes had a culture shock. I remember thinking my hair doesn't look like the kids at school. And back in the 90s, I was really one of the minorities. There were not that many people in my class that looked like me. And people would come and like touch your hair and be like, oh, you look different. And they'd say, oh, your nose looks different and your mouth is bigger. Now in 2026, it's a cool thing to have big lips. But back in those times, people were like, oh, your lips are big and your nose is big and you're a different color. And sometimes people would come and touch your skin because they're like, they'd never seen black people before. So as a little child, that does something subconsciously. It makes you realize or makes you think that you're inferior because you're different. You're not like the other girls who have their hair flowing. You're not like the other people who have this skin color. And I remember growing up and my parents telling me, "You're different, okay?" And they meant it from the bottom of my heart, with the best intention. And they would say, "You are not from this country. You have to work twice as hard in this country to be on the same level." And that constant reinforcement of you're not from here, you are not like them, you have to work twice as hard, you are different, does something to you when you're a young child, because it reinforces that you're different, you're the minority, you're not like them. You have to work twice as hard. There are special rules, there are different rules for these type of people, and there are different rules for us. So those are some of the challenges that, as a young child growing up, you would see. Another one of the challenges is growing up, and this is the challenge of living between two worlds. Growing up, I'd go to school and people would speak English, but one thing that my parents did was, as soon as I got to the doorstep, like as soon as I put my toe like this into my house, I was in the embassy of Zimbabwe for all intents purpose. The moment I got home, I was in Zimbabwe. I was the embassy, the headquarters of Zimbabwe was my house. My parents made sure that you could not speak English in my house. I would speak English to my parents, and they would just look at me like this. I would speak English, and they would literally look at me. Wanga usingavumi ukutaura chirungu kumba. It was a sin. It was an error. And I'm grateful for that, because now my Shona is not perfect, but I am able to, years down the line, I can speak to you in Shona. Tinototaura nyaya, totokurukura ne rurimi rwamai. Yeah, okay. Yeah, anyway, you get my point. So you're this persona at school, you're this person at school speaking English and with the English, and then as soon as you get home, you're in Africa. You are an African in Africa at home. So it's like a double life. By day, you're like, what are them? By night, you're back to being in Zimbabwe, eating Zimbabwean food. My parents, you ate what you were given. None of this stuff that we do now. And when I was living with my parents back in the 90s, you ate what was there. You had taijika, maguru, mazondo, matemba, derere, everything. And I'll never forget. And I thought, bearing in mind, I had never been to any of my friends' house at that point. I had never known any different. So in my little mind, everybody eats this stuff because that's normal. That's just how I grew up. And I remember I invited my friend over. I was maybe about 8 or 9, and I remember inviting my friend over for a play date, and that was the first time that a friend of mine had come over. And as usual, my mum was making dinner, and my friend was like, "Oh, what's for dinner?" So we went into the kitchen, and we and I asked mum, "What's for dinner?" And in the pot was this big. It was big. It was this big tilapia, this big, eyes and everything. It wasn't even, it was just a massive bit of tilapia with its eyes. Now, for context, English people don't really eat tilapia like that. It's usually like boneless meat, boneless salmon, salmon fillets. So this 8-year-old girl had never seen fish with eyes before. She was absolutely traumatized. Traumatized. She's like, what in the world are you doing? Why does it have its eyes? Like, that's scary and that's gross. Um, yeah, I don't think she came back after that. But that made me realize, oh, we're different. We eat different food. Again, reinforcing the fact that I'm not like them, they're not like me, we're different. With what on earth are these black people doing? Eating the whole eyes and all. They didn't even, their head was like removed, eyes and all. It was still, everything was there. Another one of the differences between living in both worlds. And we didn't really visit much back home much. And I think one of the differences and the perceptions that you have of Zimbabwe, moving from Zimbabwe to England, or to any part of outside of Zimbabwe, you always hear stories. So I didn't go back much when I was younger, but I would hear stories about when you tell somebody you're leaving one place for a better future, which is somewhere in the diaspora, in my case, the England. When you tell somebody where we've left Zimbabwe for a better future, what you're what really you're saying in a way is there were limited or a lack of opportunities here, and we moved somewhere for greener pastures. So as a little child, subconsciously, and it's all the stuff that I've been reflecting on now, in my mind, I saw Zimbabwe as somewhere that had no opportunities. There was just nothing there because a lot of people, my friends, my family, were moving from Zimbabwe to the United Kingdom, to Australia, to all of these places. So in my mind, having never had not really any connection or any roots, and never really having gone back, I just thought Zimbabwe had no opportunities. There are no that it's somewhere where you leave. It's not somewhere where you want to go back because everybody's leaving for greener pastures. And psychologically, I just thought, okay, I don't have anything to do with Zimbabwe. I don't have any roots. Yes, we're in Zimbabwe, we're Zimbabweans living in England, but I had never had any desire to go back to Zimbabwe because there were no opportunities, and the stories that you would have heard, or the stories that you heard back then of things were really tough and no jobs and all of these things. You just think, why would you want to go back there if it's like this? Again, as a young child, these are all of the things that I grew up thinking. And yes, you'd visit. And even when you'd visit, I think one of the biggest things that I think you see as somebody living in between both worlds, and it's an identity thing, is never really quite fitting in. When you're in the UK, when you're in the diaspora, they see you as African. You're African. You're not one of us. You're African. And this reflects through conversations. A lot of times people would say to me, "Oh, where are you from?" And I would be like, "The Midlands," or "England." And they'd say, "No, where are you from?" And I'd say, "The Midlands," or "England." And they'd say, "No, where are your parents from?" And that's insinuating you are not from this place. Where are you really, really from? Again, going back to, you don't really fit in. Even if you have a British passport, you're a national of that place, there's a part of you that thinks, I just don't fully belong there in this place. Because again, conversations like that, and racism exists everywhere. You would hear stories and things of people being racist towards you for being in the country. People would say, go back. And I never actually faced any of this, thank God. But you would hear people say, "Go back to your country, you don't belong this," the N-word and all of these things. So part of you never really feels like this is home. But equally, when I did start going back to Zimbabwe, you never quite fully belong there either. I've landed touchdown in H-Town, Harare. The weather is absolutely beautiful. I can feel my skin like breathing life, the sun breathing life into my skin already. Like, oh, sun just does something to my skin. And I'm excited. Look at that. Oh, you can't even see it because of my hair. And the aim of this trip is just to network. My job this trip is to network and get contacts in places that I want to be. So that's what I'm going to do. Places like Zimbabwe, it's all about who you know, not what you know, who you know. Because you know someone who knows somebody who knows someone who knows somebody who's willing to show you something or give you a leg up or give you some sort of opportunity. So I'm playing networker this time. Networking, getting to know, getting in those rooms. Let me go and eat. So you don't belong in the diaspora. You don't quite belong in Zimbabwe. Even in Zimbabwe, they'll just look at you like, there's something different about you. And people in Zimbabwe, they know when you're not fully from there, or when you've been abroad. They're like, and they'll just be like, there's something different. There's something different about you. And when you open your mouth to speak, and your shona is different, your skin looks different, and automatically a part of them starts treating you different. So there's a sense of not really belonging fully in England and in Zimbabwe. When I can speak Shona. I can speak enough Shona to speak in England. But when I go to Zimbabwe, I'm like, oh, they're gonna catch me out. They're gonna see that I'm a fraud. So yeah, it's home, but it's not fully home. England is home, but it's not fully home. And that lack of full identity, and I'm very proudly Zimbabwean. I'll say that I don't even try and be, and I am proudly Zimbabwean. I am fully 100% proudly Zimbabwean. But then I realized, as over the last couple of months, having said that I'm fully proudly Zimbabwean, Dimwana Wenik, I am. But I realized that I actually didn't know much about my country. I didn't know much about Zimbabwe. I didn't know much about independence and the liberation struggle. And I just never, again, growing up in England, you learn British history. You learn Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria and you learn the British culture and the British history. And I actually realized I've never been taught Zimbabwean history and Zimbabwean culture outside of the Zimbabwean embassy of my home. There was no lessons on Zimbabwe, or what that even means. Like, what is Zimbabwe? I didn't know much about Rhodesia. I never really even thought to research, because again, a part of me is my roots are in England. I've never really known much about Zimbabwe, or never had to go back. So, and again, my perception is there's no opportunity. So why would I need to learn about Zimbabwe and anything of that sort? And I was shocked a couple of months ago, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know that much. And I've really been on a journey to understand and learn more about Zimbabwe and the culture, the heritage, the stories, the liberation story, what it means as we're going into celebrating Zimbabwean independence. Like, what does that mean? And what did certain people have to go through and fight for us to get our independence? I've been like studying history and researching just so that I know. I can't say I'm fully proudly Zimbabwean when I don't even know the culture and the history behind it. So I've really been actively like looking into Zimbabwean culture and history, and asking and calling people like, okay, what does this mean, and who's this person, and who's this person? Because again, I'm now actively making a conscious decision, now that I'm an adult, to start putting roots and learning more about my country. Being in two worlds, you kind of see the differences between Zimbabwean Zimbabweans in the diaspora and Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe. They're very different, with different mindsets. So, for example, every time I go to Zimbabwe, I see and I appreciate and I love how hard Zimbabweans work. If there are people that know how to hustle, it's Zimbabweans. Because if you don't work, you don't eat. A Zimbabwean can turn nothing into something. You can turn an opportunity. And I really appreciate and I love the drive that us Zimbabweans, but Zimbabweans living in Zimbabwe have. They have a mindset of working. You'll see somebody on the street selling tomatoes. With that money that they're selling tomatoes, they're building something, they're doing something. And there is really that entrepreneurial spirit in Zimbabwe, which I don't think is as much in the diaspora. So I see that, and every time I go, I admire that everybody's doing something. You have to do something. There may not be the systems in place where they can just sit down and do nothing. There are no like the benefit system, for example, as there is in the UK. There is no NHS in the UK. The NHS is yeah, there is no. So if you sit at home and do nothing, you won't eat. So there's a very much hustle entrepreneurial spirit that I'm learning now, and it's something that I'm literally having to learn as somebody living in the UK, because that mindset of don't just sit. Even if you have a job, you must be doing something. You must be kia, or you must be doing something. Don't just be found doing nothing. And I love and I appreciate and I admire that about Zimbabweans, because it's taught me a lot. Oh, and I think Zimbabwe has taught me risk. Your tolerance of risk has to be high. In the UK and in the diaspora, we've got a low tolerance, generally speaking, a low tolerance of risk. In Zimbabwe, you make it happen. You will find a way. Let's try. Let's try is the language. We'll try, see what happens. If it doesn't, we'll pivot, do this way. But there's a higher level of risk. Whereas in the UK or in diaspora, there's a bit of a safety mindset. You get a job, and then you get your salary, and you kind of just don't do anything else. For the average citizen or the average person, you kind of don't do anything. You don't think, I need to start a business, or I need to start a project, or I need to do this on the side, because in my opinion, a false sense of comfort and safety, because you can afford, with that salary or with that pay that you get every couple of weeks or every month, you can afford to live a comfortable life. You can pay your bills, you can pay your rent or your mortgage, you can get a car, you've got you've got gadgets, you've got tablets, you've got your phone. So because you have a level of comfort, knowing that every month I'm getting this, or even if you can't afford it, there are systems in place where you can get money from the government that will support you if you can't afford it. So there are systems and the structure and things in place in this world. So these are two worlds that if you're going back and forth, you see that there are two different ways of living. And also there are more, I find more career pathways. Whereas in Zimbabwe, you create your own career pathway. If it doesn't exist, you go and create it. Nobody's necessarily going to give you a job. You have to go and create that opportunity yourself. So I say all of this to say, I've been speaking to a lot of people recently who are at my age and beyond, who are now thinking of relocating back to Zimbabwe, or are now entertaining the idea of building roots in Zimbabwe. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means. And the information that's out there. I know of friends of mine who have moved back to Zim and who just took the bullet, didn't know what they were doing, and they've really enjoyed the process. I know of people that are thinking about relocating back to Zimbabwe, and I know of people that just don't know where to start from. And I think we can be stronger together than everyone doing their own thing. And I'm personally interested in connecting with people who are reconnecting back to Zimbabwe. I was at an event this week actually for International Women's Day. I was at the Zimbabwean embassy, and I was just seeing how women are building in Zimbabwe. They came to showcase through a program where Zimbabwean women were came to England, and they were showcasing what they're selling, what they're doing, and the businesses that they're building. And I thought it was just such an amazing opportunity to connect with women in Zimbabwe and to find out what they're doing, but also to exchange networks and exchange numbers and to speak to people who are on ground. So I'm really keen and really open to connecting with people, whether in Zimbabwe or in the diaspora, who are building in Zimbabwe, who are thinking about building in Zimbabwe, and who, or even people that have taken the leap and gone back to Zimbabwe. As I said, I am fully 100% Zimbabwean. And as a diasporan who has been away from home, trying to connect back to my roots of Zimbabwe, I think, again, we are more powerful together than we are separate. And I don't know if it's a Zimbabwean culture where everyone is just doing their own thing and just managing their own thing. But I really believe in the power of collaboration. You know something that I don't know. I know something or somebody that I know that I could connect you with. And one thing I've learned about in Zimbabwe, it really is about who you know. One person can open the door for you. One person can open the door for you. So if you're out there and you are in the same boat and you've been in the diaspora for a while and you are thinking about it, I know there are some programs and opportunities that are out there. So please do reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is Rodnan Tabani. Send me a DM. I'll also put my email address below in the description box, and let's have a chat. And I also think there is so much value in people from the diaspora going back to Zimbabwe because, as I said, there's a mindset that we have a certain level of structure. And I'm not saying Zimbabwe is not structured, but there's a certain level of thinking and exposure that somebody who's never left Zimbabwe might not have. That I think is very important in building Zimbabwe and in building resources and mindset. There is, I think there's space there, and there are gaps there, and I think there are opportunities there where we could do some amazing work in our Zimbabwe. So again, thank you. Nokutenda imese nekuona video for your time. No. I'm going to do it properly. Nokutenda imese nekuona video neku like, ku subscribe, ku commenta nenguva yamatora kuona video iyi. As usual, I'll see you in the next video. Remain blessed.